When the alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., I was already awake. I hadn't slept a minute the night before. The pressure in the air felt wrong, like something was pushing down on my chest all night. I joined the crew on deck just before first light. We were 5 miles off the coast of Norway, conducting routine measurements for an atmospheric research program. Just me, Dr. Landvik, 2 grad students, and our captain. The barometer readings had been fluctuating wildly for days. That was our excuse for staying out this long, but the truth was, no one wanted to admit how uneasy we all felt. The sea was calm, but the equipment kept malfunctioning. Every time we reset the barometer, it would spike upward for a few seconds, then drop to 0. We chalked it up to salt exposure. But by mid-morning, the captain swore he saw something in the water, a dark shape drifting just below the surface, maybe 10 meters long. He thought it was a dead whale. But it wasn't moving like any carcass I'd seen. It was too slow, almost deliberate. I went below to check the electrical cabinet. Some of the readings were coming in backwards, literally displaying negative temperatures where it should have been 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I had to physically unplug the cabin heater to stop the feedback. Around noon, Dr. Landvik called me topside. The captain was gone. We searched the entire boat, twice. It's only 30 feet long. He was nowhere. No splash. No noise. Nothing. Just gone. We put out a distress call, but the signal didn't go through. We tried again. No response. Then the boat engine cut out. That's when we noticed the wind had died completely, and the water had turned glassy. Perfectly still. Even the gulls were gone. For the next hour, the remaining 4 of us drifted silently, not speaking, not moving. No one wanted to be the one to ask what we were all thinking. Was he really gone, or had he jumped? Then the barometer went crazy again. The needle swung violently into the red. Dr. Landvik ran to shut it down before it could explode, but the dial shattered in his hand. He screamed. Blood everywhere. Glass embedded deep into his palm. As I helped wrap his hand, I looked up and saw one of the students standing by the edge, staring into the water like he was in a trance. He was crying. Not sobbing, just tears silently falling down his cheeks. He said he could hear music. A string quartet. Said it was beautiful. Then he jumped. I ran to the rail, but there was nothing. No bubbles. No ripples. No sound. Just a still, glass-like surface. I dropped a life ring over the side. It hovered for a moment, then tilted unnaturally, almost as if something pulled it down from beneath. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. We just sat, drifting in silence. That night, the wind never returned. The stars stayed hidden. The sea absorbed all light, all sound. Just before midnight, I climbed down into the sleeping quarters. The other student was lying on his bunk, eyes open, trembling. He whispered, "They're not under us. They're inside." I asked him what he meant. He looked at me and said, "I saw it in the barometer. That's not a pressure system. That's a mouth." I didn't sleep that night either. By morning, I was alone. I woke to find the last student gone. His bunk was empty, the sheets still warm. No note. No sound. I checked every corner of the boat, even opened the storage lockers. Nothing. There's a kind of panic that doesn't scream, it just hums beneath your skin. That was me. I kept telling myself I was hallucinating, that sleep deprivation was distorting things. I repeated that like a prayer. It helped for a while. Then the boat shifted. Not a wave. Not the wind. It just tilted, slow and wrong, like something beneath us was adjusting its shape. I scrambled topside and stood frozen. There were no clouds. No sun. Just a sickly gray overhead, endless and low. The horizon was gone. The sea looked stretched, pulled too tight, as if we were trapped inside a reflective bowl. And then I heard it. Not the music the student had described, but a hum. Low subsonic. It made the fillings in my teeth ache. It wasn't coming from around me. It was coming from below. I grabbed the satellite phone again. Still nothing. Static. I screamed into it anyway. I don't know what made me look down into the water. Maybe the sound pulled my eyes. Maybe I felt the heat rising from the deck shift. But what I saw, it wasn't a shape. It was an opening. An immense, slow-moving iris, far below, opening wide. Not a real eye, not biologically. More like a metaphor carved into reality. A kind of pressure wound. I could feel it looking back. The barometer hadn't been malfunctioning. It had been reacting. I don't remember grabbing the flare gun, but I fired it. Useless. The flare arced into the sky and vanished as though swallowed by the atmosphere. I wanted to jump. I considered it. The water seemed calm, inviting even. My body leaned forward against my will. But something caught me. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. The captain's hat. It was hanging from the railing, right where he used to stand during morning checks. It hadn't been there before. I backed away. That night, I lashed myself to the wheel post with a length of emergency cord. I was shaking too hard to tie a proper knot. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. I woke up to voices. Dozens of them. They weren't speaking English. Or anything human. Just soft, rhythmic syllables. Like breathing in code. Then I realized they weren't coming from the air. They were coming from inside the hull. Every wall of the boat had started vibrating. Not violently, more like a gentle pulse, as if the entire vessel had become a throat preparing to speak. I pressed my ear to the deck. It was whispering my name. I vomited and blacked out. When I came to, I was on shore. I don't know how I got there. My wrists were still red from the emergency cord. The boat was gone. They say I was found wandering a beach 30 miles from where we lost contact. They think I abandoned the vessel during a psychotic break. That's what the reports say. But I know the truth. The sea isn't empty. It's listening. And sometimes, very rarely, it answers. But not with waves. With hunger. I shouldn't have agreed to take the job. But the money was good, and at the time, I needed a way to disappear for a while. Off-grid. They called it. A salvage survey. A private firm, no name, just a P.O. box, was offering triple standard pay to anyone with deep sea certification. The only catch? Total radio silence. No tracking, no log sharing. They gave us the coordinates by hand, 63 degrees 42 minutes north, 10 degrees 34 minutes west. The North Atlantic. I didn't ask questions. There were 6 of us. The vessel, the Avra, was retrofitted for submersible deployment. Everything was top-notch, except the sub itself. That thing looked barely seaworthy. The weld lines were irregular. The inside smelled like glue. The supervisor, a man named Gerst, gave us minimal instruction. He just kept saying, "There's a signal. It's old. You'll know it when you hear it." We launched at dusk. I piloted with a younger tech, Mason. First 2 hours were smooth, standard descent. Then, about 900 meters down, we passed into a thermocline so sharp the windows fogged instantly. The sonar ping started lagging behind, like sound was taking longer to bounce back. At 1,100 meters, we saw the trench. It wasn't mapped. It looked like the ocean floor had been torn down the middle. Jagged walls fell away into blackness that the floodlights couldn't touch. That's when the signal hit. It wasn't a sound. Not exactly. It was more like a presence. A magnetic pressure. Mason described it as being looked at sideways. The readout just showed gibberish, non-repeating symbols flickering too fast to process. And then it cut. Just silence. We hovered above the trench mouth. The compass spun like crazy. Mason tried to reboot the instrumentation. I just stared out into the dark. I could feel something moving down there. Not water. Not current. Massachusetts slow. Huge. Then I saw the lights. A pattern deep in the trench. Like emergency strobes. Red, white, red, white. It looked like they were fixed to a structure, something massive, half submerged in the sediment. I reached for the camera controls. That's when Mason started screaming. He wasn't looking outside. He was staring at the glass between us and the sea. Not through it, at it. He kept saying, "It's in the reflection." Over and over. I turned toward him, and saw it too. Not a shape. A suggestion. A contour of something massive, pale, stretched across the curvature of the glass. Like a face pushed up against the other side, inches from us. But when I looked directly at it, there was nothing. Just us, our own reflections, and the dark beyond. I wanted to surface. Immediately. But Mason had collapsed. Breathing shallow, eyes wide. Catatonic? I tried to reverse thrust. The engine stuttered. The sub rocked slightly, like something had brushed against it. I checked the pressure seals, no breach. That's when the emergency cable detached. It didn't snap. It unscrewed. One bolt at a time. We started falling. Not fast, at first. More like being lowered deliberately. Controlled. I tried every switch, every manual override. Nothing responded. The propulsion was dead, but we were still moving. The lights outside dimmed. I kept yelling at Mason, but he was unresponsive. His pupils had dilated fully. There was a thin trail of blood dripping from his nose, suspended perfectly still in the weightless cabin air. I strapped myself in and watched the depth meter. 1,400 meters. 1,600. 1,900. At 2,100 meters we stopped. Just stopped. Everything went dark. No power. No glow from the consoles. No emergency lights. Only the sound of our own breathing, and the soft metal creak of the hull adjusting to pressure. I can't explain what happened next. There was light, just barely. But it wasn't from the sub. It came from below. I leaned over Mason's seat and peered through the viewport. Down in the trench, the strobe pattern had changed. It was now constant. Steady red pulses illuminating shapes. I saw the side of a vessel. Steel. Torn. Covered in algae and sediment. But not rusted. Not decayed like a decades-old wreck. It looked recent. Fresh. The name on the hull, Aviare. Our boat. Impossible. I stared so long I forgot to blink. Then something floated into view. A figure. Drifting slowly up toward us from the trench. At first I thought it was a diver. But as it turned I realized. It was Mason. Or another Mason. Same face. Same torn wetsuit. Same gash across the cheek I just bandaged 2 days earlier. He drifted past the viewport, eyes open, smiling faintly. My Mason, the one in the seat beside me, started convulsing. I grabbed his shoulders. Tried to hold him steady. He gasped, mouth working silently like he was underwater. Then he whispered something I couldn't understand. And then he stopped breathing. The sub started to rise. Slowly, then faster. Instruments flickered back on in erratic bursts. I couldn't steer. I couldn't stop it. The trench fell away beneath us. When we broke the surface, it was night again. But not the same night. There was no Avra. No chase boat. No signal. Just water, flat and endless in every direction. I activated the beacon. Sat there for 2 days before a research vessel picked us up. They found only me. No Mason. No signs of another sub or any debris. I tried to explain, but they didn't believe me. They said there's no trench at those coordinates. That nothing that deep exists there. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, I see that reflection again, in windows, in puddles, in the shimmer of metal. Something is looking back. And it remembers my name. The storm came out of nowhere. We were 3 days into a 10-day charter from Lisbon to the Azores. Just 2 passengers, me and my older brother Mark, and the boat's owner, a quiet guy named Elias. He was ex-Navy, knew the Atlantic like a worn coat pocket. The forecast had been clean. Bright skies, fair winds. But around 1 a.m., The barometer dropped hard and fast, like the air had fallen out of the sky. Within 20 minutes, we were in the middle of a churning black hell. Waves like cliffs, wind sharp as blades. Elias screamed at us to get below deck. Mark helped me down the ladder while Elias fought the helm. For 2 hours we listened to the wind scream and the hull groan, unsure if we'd be torn apart or flipped over. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Just like that. Silence. Not a dying down kind of silence. A severed kind. As if the storm had been paused. We emerged slowly. The sea was flat. Not calm, flat. Like obsidian glass stretching to the edge of the world. The moon hung still in the sky. Unmoving. Mark said it was just eye of the storm. But I knew better. The boat wasn't rocking. Not even a ripple. That's not the eye. That's something else. Elias was standing at the bow, staring down into the water like it had spoken to him. When we called out, he didn't respond. Then he leaned forward and jumped. We ran to the edge. No splash. No movement. Just a widening circle of black beneath where he'd gone under. The sea didn't take him. It accepted him. I grabbed the emergency radio. Static. Nothing but a low, vibrating hum, like the machine was holding its breath. Mark tried the GPS. No coordinates. Just zeros across the screen. We floated like that for what felt like hours. At some point, Mark went below deck to look for flares. I stayed topside, scanning the horizon for anything, ships, birds, stars. Anything that moved. But the sky was locked. The moon hadn't shifted an inch since the storm ended. Even time had gone still. Then the radio chirped. One burst, sharp and quick. I grabbed the handset. Nothing. Then another chirp, this one longer. Followed by a short, garbled burst of sound. I turned the gain up. Leaned close. The noise was rhythmic. Not random. Like a code. 3 long pulses. 2 short. Then a pause. And then my name. Clear as day, through the static. Chris. I dropped the handset. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It wasn't human. More like a memory trying to speak. Mark came rushing back. I didn't tell him what I heard. We fired the flare. It never exploded. Just rose, and rose, until the light vanished into the still sky. We stared after it for a long time, until the water started to move again. Not waves. Not wind. A slow circle began forming around the boat. A spiral. Wide and deliberate. The kind of movement that implies intention. Mark leaned over the railing. I told him to stop. He said, "It's playing it back." What? He pointed to the radio. It's not broadcasting. It's repeating. Everything we've ever said. Every word. Then we both heard it. Our voices, faint, distorted, coming from below the boat. Conversations we'd had. Arguments. Secrets. Then silence again. And something knocked, once, against the hull. Mark wanted to dive. Said if Elias had jumped, he might still be alive. Treading water below us, maybe caught on something. I told him there was no current, no movement. If Elias was down there, we'd see him. He didn't listen. Tied a rope to his waist, grabbed a flashlight, and went in without a word. The splash broke the silence like glass. I held the line, counting seconds. He'd said 5 minutes max. But at 3, the rope went slack, not taut like he was drifting, but like it was unspooling on its own. I called out. No reply. At minute 4, I started pulling. The line felt off. It gave too easily. Like it wasn't pulling weight, just memory. The water absorbed each tug like fabric. Then I pulled in the end. The knot was intact. But the rope had been cut clean through. Like something had severed it with a blade. I dropped it and backed away from the railing. That's when I noticed the voices again. Not from the radio this time. From below deck. I crept down, heart pounding. Every step felt like descending into a throat. The cabin was dark, except for the faint glow of Elias's laptop on the table. It had powered itself on. The screen was covered in text. Lines and lines of it. Not typing, transcription. My voice. Mark's voice. Everything we'd said for the past 3 days, word for word. With timestamps. Even the muttered things. The private ones. Things no one else heard. I scrolled up. It didn't stop. It kept going back. Weeks. Months. A year. I found sentences from nights I spent alone in my apartment. Phone calls I'd had with my mother. Things I said in the shower. Some of the lines were wrong. Distorted. Words I never said, but recognized somehow. Like they'd been thought instead of spoken. I slammed the lid shut and ran back topside. The air felt thicker now. Oppressive. Every breath tasted metallic. The moon had started to change color, no longer white, but bruised and dull. Then I saw him. Mark. Standing on the water. Not in it. On it. He wasn't wet. Just there. Still. Facing the boat. He didn't wave. Didn't speak. But his mouth was open. Slightly. Like he was listening. Then he lifted his arm and pointed, straight at the radio. I didn't want to, but I turned it on. A sound came through. Low. Vibrating. Like a song played backward at the wrong speed. Underneath it, Mark's voice. Repeating one sentence over and over. It knows where you've been. Then the boat lurched sideways. Not from wind. Not from waves. Like it had been nudged. I fell, slammed into the mast, blacked out. When I woke, it was daylight. Bright. Ordinary. No spiral in the water. No voices. No Elias. No Mark. Just me, drifting. A rescue team found me 2 days later. They said I was in shock. Dehydrated. Delirious. I gave them coordinates. They checked. Nothing there. No trench. No current. No records of any storm in that area. They showed me photos of the boat. There was no laptop on board. No rope. No flare gun. But the hull had one strange thing they couldn't explain. On the underside, someone had carved a single phrase deep into the metal, using something impossibly sharp. Do not answer back. We found her adrift. No name, no flag, no markings. Just a smooth, rusted hull floating 15 miles south of the shipping lanes. The crew of the Vesper spotted her just past midnight, a dark silhouette against the calm sea. The Coast Guard was 2 hours out, so protocol said we wait. But curiosity said otherwise. Captain Torres gave me and Lou the go-ahead to board her. We approached by dinghy under floodlight. The ship's deck was slick with salt and time, but stable. No signs of damage. No blood, no struggle. But also, no one. Empty. Completely. The interior was strange. Metal corridors with no signage. No labels on the doors. Like it was meant to be forgotten. The walls were covered in a thick, green-gray patina. Every surface had condensation on it, like the ship had been sweating. Lou found the bridge. All the instruments were dead. No power, no logs. Just a central console with a thick, analog dial, something I hadn't seen since training. A mechanical altimeter. But the numbers were wrong. It read, minus 21.0 meters. Not above water. Below it. But we were on the bridge. That's when we found the room. Back near the stern, behind a door with no handle, just a circular port window covered in frost. The glass was perfectly clear, though. And through it, I could see inside. It was a small room. 4 walls. No furniture. No equipment. But it was lit. Soft yellow light humming steadily. And inside, something floated. At first I thought it was just water damage, or a trick of condensation. But no, there was movement. A figure. Suspended in midair, inches off the floor. Not swimming. Not floating in water. Just drifting. Like a ghost in zero gravity. I called Lou over. He pressed his face to the port. Then he whispered, "That's me." I pulled him back. He was shaking, pale. Said he'd seen his own face, floating there, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. Hair moving like it was underwater. He insisted it wasn't just a hallucination, it had his scar. The one behind his ear. Said it was like looking at himself through a dream. I checked the door again. No lock. No latch. Just cold metal. I knocked. Once. The light inside flickered. The figure turned slightly, just enough to suggest awareness. And the temperature in the hallway dropped. We both felt it. That's when we heard the sound. From behind the door. A low, rhythmic thud. Like something tapping from inside. We didn't wait. We ran back to the dinghy, radioed the Vesper, told Torres we were pulling back. She didn't argue. We left the ghost ship behind. But as we drifted away, the stern light came on. A perfect yellow glow. No power. No generator. Just that one light. Lou didn't speak for the rest of the night. Back on the Vesper, Lou barely ate. He kept glancing toward the water like something was following us. I stayed close. We didn't talk about what he saw, what we saw. It felt like saying it out loud might make it real. At sunrise, the Coast Guard arrived at the last coordinates. They found nothing. Not just no ship, nothing. No trace. Like the sea had sealed behind it. They asked us to file incident reports. I wrote mine carefully, leaving out the room. The figure. The face. Lou didn't file his. Instead, that night, he came to my cabin and asked if I believed in recursion. He meant it literally, events folding back into themselves over and over. "I think it was waiting for me," he said. "And not just me. All of us. That ship, it collects." He pulled out a notebook, something he always kept on him. Inside, a sketch, the room. Perfect lines. The port window. The figure floating inside. Only now, it wasn't him. It was me. He said the vision changed when we left. One moment it was his face. Then, as he glanced back from the dinghy, it had become mine. Same jacket. Same cut above my eyebrow from a week earlier. He said the light inside the room had started pulsing, slow and steady, like a heartbeat. I told him he needed rest. He didn't argue, but he didn't sleep either. 2 nights later, I found him in the radio room, tuning through static. I asked what he was doing. Listening for it. He stopped on a band of silence. Then, faint, just for a second, I heard it too. Not a voice. A breath. As if someone exhaled just behind the mic. Then, "Let us drift." I yanked the power. Lou didn't flinch. The next morning, he was gone. His cabin was undisturbed. No signs of a struggle. His boots were still there. But his life jacket was missing. We searched for 3 days. Nothing. When we returned to port, I filed my real report. Gave them everything. They sealed it. Classified. I left the service 2 weeks later. But it didn't end. Last month, I got a package. No return address. Just a flash drive. On it, a video. Grainy. Corrupted audio. But clear enough. A man in a small steel room. No furniture. Lit from above. Floating, just off the floor. Eyes closed. Hair moving gently, like in water. I recognized him. Lou. And behind the glass, barely visible in the reflection, was another face. Mine. Mouth slightly open. As if whispering something no one could hear. I'd never seen bioluminescence like that before. That's what I told the others when we first noticed it. This strange, shimmering trail in the water that started showing up around 2 a.m., circling our boat in perfect rings. It was my first ocean crossing as part of the Brightwake's crew, a modest 3-man research vessel sent to collect thermal readings between Iceland and Greenland. Captain Reese was the strong, silent type. Arrow, the engineer, kept mostly to himself. I was just a data tech, green and eager, and until that night, pretty bored. I'd been below deck, cataloging samples, when Arrow called me up. I remember his exact words. "You've gotta see this, it's writing." I thought he was joking, but when I climbed out into the biting cold, I saw it too. The ocean around the bright wake was glowing in arcs of blue and green. Not random pulses like plankton. Not chaotic. These were deliberate, like cursive. A smooth spiral of symbols trailing behind the boat, and worse, it wasn't fading. Reese didn't speak at first. Just stared. We tried to record it, but the cameras glitched every time we pointed them down. The images blurred, the timestamps reversed, like the footage itself was resisting documentation. The compass spun in lazy circles. The GPS pinged random positions. Then the pattern changed. The glowing shapes tightened, drawing in toward the hull. Arrow leaned over the side, phone out, trying to catch something, anything. That's when we heard the first knock. Not wood on metal. Bone. A rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk from beneath the hull, perfectly timed with the spiral. A pulse that rose from the sea and rattled our bones. Arrow dropped his phone. I grabbed Reese. "We need to move!" But the engines wouldn't engage. No sputter. No churn. Dead silent. Arrow pointed. "Look!" Out across the glassy water, maybe 20 meters out, something was breaking the surface. A mound of pale, smooth mass. Round, motionless, like a hill of flesh. It hovered for a moment, then vanished. No splash. Just gone. We stood there, frozen, until the glow beneath us pulsed bright, once. I felt something shift inside my skull. A pressure behind my eyes, like my thoughts had hiccuped. Then we heard the voice. Not out loud. In our heads. 3 words. "You are red." Reese staggered back like he'd been punched. Arrow was whispering something over and over, but I couldn't make it out. I tried to speak and couldn't. My tongue wouldn't move. The knocking started again. This time faster. Then a high-pitched whine filled the air, like feedback, but too perfect. No distortion. No end. Just a single, precise tone. That's when Arrow jumped. He didn't scream. Didn't hesitate. He just stepped up onto the edge of the rail like he was walking through a doorway and fell forward. Reese tried to grab him and slipped. I caught Reese before he went over too. We called his name. Shouted. Shined lights. Nothing. The water returned to stillness. The glow faded. But the tone didn't stop. I realized then, Arrow hadn't been pushed or pulled. He wanted to go. Something in that sound, it did something to him. To all of us. The engine started on its own. Full throttle. We didn't touch a thing. The boat turned in a slow arc, then accelerated, straight ahead. The GPS came back online. It displayed one word. Below. We sailed under our own power for 5 hours. Neither of us touched the controls. Reese stood by the console the entire time, arms at his sides, watching the wheel turn on its own. I sat by the hatch with a knife in my hand, like that would matter if something climbed up. The tone was gone by morning, replaced by silence that felt heavier. Denser. Reese tried to speak at one point, but his voice came out wrong, low, choked, like his throat forgot how to form words. He didn't try again. Around noon, the engine cut out. We'd reached the coordinates. Except there were none. The GPS displayed a black square. No numbers, no maps. Just a blinking dot floating in emptiness. I checked the depth gauge, nothing. It wasn't stuck at 0. It was blank. As if we were floating above a hole that extended beyond measurement. Reese finally moved. He walked to the rail and leaned out, staring straight down. I followed cautiously. The water was perfectly still. Not just calm, mirror flat. We could see our reflection with eerie clarity. But there was something wrong with it. The reflection was off by a half-second. A delay? Reese moved his hand, and the mirror image followed a heartbeat later. Then it smiled. Neither of us had. The surface shimmered. Ripples formed inward from the edges of the boat, unnatural, like gravity was bending sideways. The air buzzed, almost imperceptibly. A tight pressure pressed on my eardrums. Then Reese whispered something. The first thing he'd said in hours. "It's not water." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out with both hands and pushed his reflection. The surface accepted him like gel. No splash. No sound. He was gone. I screamed. Pounded the spot he vanished. But the surface had sealed behind him, flat and mocking. The boat tilted slightly, as if lighter. I backed away, shaking, muttering to myself. That's when I noticed the screens below deck had powered on again. Every monitor showed the same thing, a live feed from beneath the boat. But it wasn't dark. Arrow and Reese were there, both of them, floating in blackness, lit by some unseen source. Their bodies hovered motionless, eyes open, faces calm. Behind them, something vast. Pale. A curve that stretched out of frame in all directions. Like the lid of a colossal eye. The screens flickered. Text crawled across them slowly. "The read is done." Then the power cut. And I was alone. I sat on the floor for a long time, unsure what to do. Every time I blinked, I saw that pale curve. That impossibly massive shape behind them. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't attack. It was observation. We hadn't discovered anything. We'd been sampled. Eventually, the engine started again. The boat turned, heading back the way we came. I didn't fight it. I stayed on that boat for 2 more days before a patrol ship intercepted us. They said I was lucky, that I'd drifted into one of their lanes, that I was mumbling nonsense when they found me. I never told them the truth. I never mentioned the reflection, or the word now etched into the inside of my eyelids when I tried to sleep. Surface pending.